In this video, you'll learn how to animate the cross-sectional plane and the camera using the timeline. Open house.psd. Let's examine the timeline and compare that to the layers panel. This document has two layers, house and gradient fill 1, and these are mirrored in the timeline structure here. Expand house and you'll see that it has additional items. Let's drag this up so we can see more of the timeline. Each one of these is an animatable track. I'm interested in the 3D cross-section. Right now the playhead is at frame 0. We'll create a keyframe at frame 0 in this track by clicking the stopwatch icon. That adds a key right there. I'm going to zoom out of the timeline so I can see the whole timeline across here. And I can see that the duration by default is 10 seconds. I'll use that duration in this particular project. I'd like to go to the end of the timeline, so I'm going to open the timeline panel menu and say go to time, and I'll type 10 right here. That's 10 seconds and no frames. Okay. That should take the playhead right to the end of the timeline. And at this point, I want the cross section to be all the way up. So I'm going to drag this value up all the way to the top. And I don't want to overshoot that very much. So I'm going to click in here and then use the down arrow until I start to see that cut through the roof. I'll go up one. So positive 21 is the proper offset here. And when we made that change, it automatically generated a new key over here. So the timeline is going to interpolate between those two states. We can see that by dragging the playhead now. I'm going to drag it over here somewhere to the left. And you'll see that as I drag it, I'm moving through the building. Okay, let's go back to frame 0, and a quick way of doing that is to click on this arrow here. These two arrows provide a way of moving the playhead from key to key. So I'll click here, and it will go to this key frame, frame 0. So at that moment, I also want to record the position of the camera, and that's animated in this track. I'll click on the stopwatch, and that will create a keyframe right there. I'm going to go somewhere in the middle of the timeline, maybe around 5 seconds, but it doesn't have to be exact. And then I'll go to the 3D panel and make sure current view is selected. Use the move tool and use rotate the 3D object. Then position the cursor on screen and drag to the left. This will rotate the view like so. This automatically generates a keyframe right here. Now I'd like to go to the end of the timeline, and a quick way of doing that is to click this arrow, which allows us to navigate to the last keyframe in that particular track. Now that we're here, I'm going to rotate the camera yet again, and I'm also going to use this tool to drag the camera over a little bit so that by the end of the video, the building is more or less centered on the screen. Now we can go back to the initial keyframe here and get a sense of the animation by dragging the playhead. The response is quite sluggish because a lot is going on. The cross-sectional plane is moving, and so is the camera. So we're getting a combination of both actions taking place across this timeline. Now I notice over here that we lost the background. Let's find out why that's happening. I'll scroll down here, and you can see this is the problem. We need to drag this over so that the gradient fill happens across the entire video. After you've previewed the video, the last step is to render it out to a video file. And you can do that down here by clicking on this icon. It will open up a dialog box giving us some options. Here we have the name of the file that we're going to output, house.mp4. It's going to be output into the Chapter 9 folder, and all of these parameters look good by default. All we have to do is click render and wait for quite a while for Photoshop to go through the process of rendering out each and every frame. There are 300 frames in this video, from 0 to 299. So once that's done, you can view the video, which is called house.mp4, in the QuickTime player. And there we have it, house.mp4. I'm going to make this full screen, and let's go ahead and watch the video unfold. The house seems to grow out of the ground as the cross-section plane continues to move upward. So in this video, you learned how to animate the cross-section and the camera using the timeline.